X. X fucking crashes. Of course. Naturally. All right, show this. Do that.
Was that last week we talked about the Trump speech?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was last week. All right, let me do a little. Mr. Producer. We got all them hoes.
All right. We're up. We're live.
Just two fine gentlemen watching their leader. We got to start with that. Yeah, you got to talk about that.
Yeah, so welcome in everybody, Gentlemen's Code. Last week we came on here, we watched a good portion, about almost 2 hours worth of the Trump speech in front of Congress, the State of the Union address, if you want to call it that, the state of the first 2 months of the administration address.
Yeah.
But while we were live, we stream on multiple different platforms here. So I'm live on Twitch, TikTok, soon to be Facebook, X, and YouTube. I know Priyama also has Kick, but also those platforms as well. And I have the streaming software up, which shows me the multi-stream of who's chatting, but it doesn't show me for TikTok because TikTok has its own live center and data where it's coming through on its own thing. But I usually just close it out as soon as it goes live because it slows down the stream a little bit. It uses up a little more GPU to have some more windows open. But after the stream ended and like a day later, I went on to the TikTok live studio just to see what some of the viewership was looking like. We had over 1,000 viewers and we had over 250 people commenting during the State of the Union address. And it was pretty typical for what you would think a Trump address would go on TikTok. So yeah, I mean, if you guys are watching on TikTok, make sure to subscribe to me so you guys can see this more, and to follow on YouTube and check us out on some other platforms where we post some more content. But that's TikTok just offers the live stream ability, so we're going to use it. So yeah, I already see the rollers coming through on TikTok. They love the gentleman.
Yeah, the gentleman's code on TikTok's it's a crowd pleaser. A thousand plus. They're in the comments. Bobby was telling me. He said this one guy said, "What did he say? Two fine gentlemen."
Two fine gentlemen. It was like admiring their leader or something.
What a great comment. Admiring their leader. And then you got the fucking the libs going, fake news, it's not true, it's not true. It's like, okay. Yeah, they probably loved the fact that, you know what? That's a good question. I heard many, 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 many Dems condemn the behavior that they had at the State of the Union, which was great. That was something where I said, oh, okay, hold on. We got some common ground here. Almost everybody, I mean, bro, that was hard to be able to defend because you knew that was wrong. Of course
Yeah.
it was wrong. Watching it live, it was clearly you don't do that. That's just what kind of point are you trying to prove by disrespecting the families of people who've had their children killed, and then a 13-year-old boy with brain cancer who just got named to the Secret Service? Can't clap for that. What is that? That has nothing to do with politics.
I know. Trump teed it up perfectly though, because he said and no matter what I do, he's like, I could find the best cure for any disease, and these people won't stand up or clap. And he kind of teed off he started with that, and then later on he went on to the Lake and Riley family who was killed by an immigrant, and some other uh, people that have some serious problems going on, and then the child with brain cancer got selected to the Secret Service. So he teed it up. He's like, these people aren't going to stand no matter what I do. But here's all this great stuff that we're doing. That really has nothing to do with politics. This is just making America better and trying to shed some light on some serious issues. But
Mm-hmm.
they couldn't stand for it. So it made them look even worse than they already look in the light of some people.
Yeah, Trump knows what he's doing. These guys aren't foolish. They knew exactly what they were doing going into that. Retrospectively looking at that, you say, "Oh, okay, yeah, that was the intention." They knew that they weren't going to stand for anything. They knew they weren't going to clap for anything. So he laid it on thick. Boom, boom, boom. The guy into West Point, the border patrol officer, Lincoln Ryland's family, the girl who got spiked in the face by a dude, and it caused brain trauma, and she couldn't walk. She got partially paralyzed for however many years. And then you have this goofy on The View. You see the video of Whoopi Goldberg talking about how men should be in women's sports.
Yeah, she's a clown.
I gotta. These are the people that they have on TV. These are the people that other Americans go to for their advice or for their opinion. How in the what is Whoopi Goldberg talking about? She said, "Well, saying that men can't be in women's sports is, what you're saying is girls don't know how to play sports. They're not competent. They know what they're doing. These girls can handle themselves." Whoopi, shut the fuck up.
Why isn't there a guy on The View? Because he would destroy you guys every single day.
Great point. Yeah, Whoopi, where are the men on The View? Whenever Stephen A came on, he fucking dunked on him.
Yeah,
Yeah, dude.
they know what they're doing. They play both sides of the fence all the time. When they go on TV, they want to show the fence. They want to be on the left side of the fence. Oh, men could play in women's sports. But then as soon as the cameras cut, they're like, oh, well, we got to protect our women and, all the da-da-da. They play both sides of the fence for sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. It's incredible to see people being willing to die on hills that nobody's willing to die on them with, right? The Democrats are willing to die on these 20%. These 80-20 issues where 80% of the population is very clearly for something and 20% are the loud minority where the Democrats are saying, no, this is the this is the issue that means most to us. We got to make sure that people can make their kids transgender and give them hormone blockers. This is what we need. And then they wonder why Americans are saying, what the fuck? No, we're going to push back against that because that's outrageous. Why should you be able to give your children hormone blockers and effectively make them infertile, destroy their hormones, and then by the time they're adults, they're probably going to completely regret the fact that they thought they were a girl trapped in a boy's body. No, they're not. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
I know, they're kids.
Your 12-year-old comes up to you and says, Mom, I want to get a tattoo on my back. You're just going to be like, oh, okay, let's go get him a tattoo. No. You can't. That's the whole point. Oh, 12-year-old, I want to go drink 2 shots of tequila. What are you going to do? No,
go ahead. No. Go ahead, Johnny. Make sure you drive home, too.
Right, yeah, and here's the keys, buddy. So who are these people? They just know common sense, but it's the revolution of common sense. It's coming back. So
actually, I just remembered something that I wanted to bring up with you, and I know we already picked something to watch, but did you watch Gavin Newsom with Charlie Kirk?
I did not.
If you've already seen the Tucker thing, let's watch the Gavin Newsom thing, because Gavin Newsom does have kind of a persona about him that what people think about him and what people think about California, and when I know Gavin Newsom from afar, right? I don't live in California. I don't know anything that goes on. But I guess what he's trying to do is he's trying to be that face of the Democrat Party that is going on podcasts, and he is talking on long form content. And I kind of respect him for it because nobody else in that party is willing to do it and shed light on, what they actually do on the day to day and talk for an hour in long form podcasts or talk about hard discussions that need to be talked about, which we see people, on the right do, like JD Vance went on podcast, Trump went on podcast, and Vivek and Elon, everyone that side goes on podcast. Tulsi Gabbard, they go on podcasts and talk about things. That's kind of their industry, and that's why I believe there was such a large shift towards the right in this past election. But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because Charlie Kirk really helped Trump win the election with his Turning Point USA program, where he went on to college campuses and he actually talks to young people, and I believe that's why we saw a large movement go to the right. So I did catch a little bit of it. I wanted to watch more of it, but I just remembered it because I know we were talking before the stream that we wanted to pick something to watch. We don't have to. We could save it for another day because Gavin Newsom's going to be having more episodes come out, but it's an interesting, conversation that we could listen to.
Yeah, Gavin Newsom. I'm interested to see what his ideas are because I didn't see the ceasefire one though. So We should still watch that just
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it literally just happened. But let's get one of those. Let's do that one for next week.
yep.
The reason that those podcasts are good because I just watched the one with Tucker and Cuomo.
Hmm.
That's why it's so good to have people with opposing opinions on podcasts on long format like that, because you understand why you have to have conversation about things to be able to get things done. If you don't have conversations with the people that you disagree with, you're never going to be able to find a common ground. It's going to continue to be division, continue to be problems, continue to be fighting, which is exactly what's happening within Congress, within the House, within the political system, or the government system. Is Democrats, anything that Republicans do or say, they have to be against, which is not the way that you get things done. That's not how you think. You shouldn't think, well, that's my opponent. Anything that they do or believe is wrong. That's not how the world works. You can
Yeah.
be opposed to people, but it doesn't mean everything that they say is wrong. Then you get yourself into positions where you're going to be off sides on so many issues, because nobody's going to be wrong about everything. So when Cuomo and Tucker were talking, it was good to hear Cuomo's ideas because he's going to bring a different perspective, which is going to make you rethink some of the things that you understand and believe in. And he's also going to bring arguments and information to the table that are not going to be your bias. Therefore, he's going to shed light to new things that you may not have heard of or seen or thought about before, which is huge. But you have to have that dialogue. At least he was willing to come on and talk to Tucker, have that dialogue, and it was a fantastic conversation. Did they agree on everything? Fuck no. But it was a conversation. It was civil. It was the idea marketplace, and the best ideas were surfacing to the top, and then you make your own conclusions.
Yeah.
The problem is that, especially, I mean, it happens on both extremes, but especially to the extreme left right now is where you see it. There's no conversation that's willing to happen. It's either you believe what I believe, or you're a disgusting human being, Nazi, bad person, da 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 da. I can't. They take this moral high ground as if you're inhuman or inhumane if you don't believe everything that they believe. Well, of course you're not going to have anything done because you're not willing to have a conversation about anything.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Shout out Brielle for the follow on Twitch.
Come on, bro.
Thanks for tuning in. But I think, and Joe Rogan said this on his podcast, I think the best case scenario is that we have two strong candidates for president, not just one strong candidate and then whatever, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were, because I don't believe they were strong candidates. They were just placed there. Because the reason is if you have two strong candidates, they can debate over those issues like we talked about. That might be 80-20 issues, but the way they solve the problem is different, and maybe the way they communicate the problem is different, and it makes you see both sides differently. Because let's just say Doge, for instance, right? I'm sure the Democrats may run on something like that. How they're going to clean up the government. So they're going to go about it a different way. Like, okay, we both believe that Doge is good, but we believe that you're going about it wrong, because their argument is Social Security, Medicaid. So if they could articulate their ideas and how they would go about it, that would be great. Not just with the picket fence, Doge is bad. Doge is bad. Right? That doesn't make anything better for us people. So obviously we're just gonna not even think about what you're saying, because one, it sounds crazy that you would want waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. Tell us how you're gonna fix it. Tell us how you're gonna clean it up. And that's just what we're not getting from one side. So we have to go with the side who's just like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of waste and abuse. We're gonna clean it up. I'll be honest, Elon and Trump, maybe they don't communicate it the best, but they're taking action, which is what matters the most. So when you take action on something, it resonates more with people than just saying what you're going to do, and that's why they're doing great right now. So the other side has to at least start communicating, at least put a foot in the door of, hey, we're going to start. It could be any issue. It doesn't have to be Doge. It could be the trans women in sports, right? And the trans and women's sports. Listen, like, okay, we don't think this is right. It shouldn't do this way, but here's our problem of how we're going to fix it and how we're going to make that side happy, how we're going to make both sides happy. That they don't do that. They don't give any explanation of to what their ideas are. They don't give any explanation of how they're going to solve the problems. So how can you go with people or vote for people that they don't give you an explanation as to what they're going to do.
Hmm.
So I think having two strong candidates is the best case scenario. And like you said, in podcasting, people have opposing ideas and they knock heads and they talk. That's how it should be. You should want two strong candidates, but we don't have that right now.
Exactly. And what you were saying with Elon and Trump, they're showing you exactly why they've been such successful businessmen because they're taking business principles and implementing it into government, which is good, which is going to get things done. So Elon is showing you with SpaceX, with Tesla, with PayPal, all these companies that he's built. Why did he build them so quickly? Why did they become so effective so quickly? Because they did action. They failed, they failed, they failed. They learned from all the failures. They get better. Action. Instead of preparing, just action, action, action over motion. That's exactly what he was doing with Doge. He's saying, okay, listen, I'm willing to risk making mistakes. I'm willing to risk having to hire some people back. I'm willing to risk ruffling some feathers in the pursuit of action, actually doing things, understanding that that's how he's going to learn. Okay, here's a mistake that we made. Cut these people too quick. Didn't know we shouldn't have done that. Okay, but then they're learning. They're getting information. These are highly intelligent, high IQ people. They're going to learn from their mistakes. So they're going to get better, and they're going to get better quickly. That's how you want them to operate. If they were to operate at the pace that government normally operates, guess what? Another 4 years goes by, we're still in massive debt, and the company's going to collapse, or the country's going to collapse. Which is one other point before, because I know we're going to jump into this video. The country financially is going to collapse. That's something that people don't want to. Oh, Doge, don't cut back on this. Ladies and gentlemen, you understand that the government the country will literally collapse. China owns so much of our U.S. debt. These other nations own so much of our U.S. debt that as the dollar continues to collapse and gets replaced as a world reserve currency, we're going to become enslaved to whatever world power owns, which is likely going to be China. So something has to be done. They can't think more than 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Think about generations. Think about your children. Think about the world that they're going to live in. This country is not going to last the way that it's going.
That's a good point.
Yeah, $36 trillion in debt. We made $5 trillion last year. The government brought in $5 trillion.
It's not sustainable to have in between a $1 to $2 trillion deficit every single year. You're racking it up. And like you said, that as I believe they're taking a step in the right direction for security in terms of a Bitcoin reserve, because we talk about this all the time, where we think the future of finance is going and digital assets and in currency. So it's good. That's a step in the right direction. But in terms of debt, like you said, they can't think people think in terms of like a fiscal year, a fiscal quarter, even like Wall Street. They're looking at, okay, Q2, these are our numbers. You need to be strategically thinking for 10, 20, 30 years. That's what China did. That's why China hasn't been in any wars in 40 years, and all they've been doing is injecting money into the economy and military. So I agree. They need to start taking a long-term strategic look at how they finance the government and how they finance the private sector. And I was going to make one more point, I know, before we get started. Oh, the stock market. You see this week, the stock market, the S&P 500 has a 10% dip. And people losing their minds. Oh, the economy, we're in a recession, economy's crashing. It's like, no, the S&P 500 in the stock market is a global market. Everybody around the world could buy into those. When America is projecting power and is applying tariffs on these countries, China, Canada, Mexico, India, everyone, EU, like everybody's getting a tariff because reciprocal tariffs. We talked about this. You put a tariff on us, we're putting a tariff on you now. That is not good for world investors around the world, right? They're going to be paying more for different goods, services that they get from America, and then vice versa. Americans aren't going to be buying as many as theirs. So inherently, that they have to move their money around. Like they can't just have all their money in the S&P or in Apple or in Nvidia, because that's not going to be as good as a return as if they just start investing in their own companies and they start doing things. So inherently, with this news and tariffs, they have to switch money. Money has to be moved around, and I think it's a springboard to just go up higher. And it was a sell off earlier this week, but I mean, I was looking at the charts. We had a sell off of 10%, I believe, it was in August. So we had a pretty steep drop off in August to in September,
Before we start
and
ripping.
nobody said anything. Yeah, and then we ripped back up to all time. We were at all-time highs on February 19th, 3 weeks ago.
So what I'm
So
saying, there's no recession. The shit's gonna rip fucking face. This later this year, you guys are hearing it right now. The S&P crypto, this shit's gonna rip face. It's not done. What Trump is doing right now is genius. So for people who don't understand what's going on, first of all, gas prices down, inflation down, price of eggs. Everybody was worried. Oh, the price of eggs. Even though that was Biden's administration that left the price of eggs for Trump, he just literally got into office. Price of eggs is coming down. Okay, interesting. Stock market's coming down. What are they doing? Why is he doing this? Trump is not looking at the stock market. He's looking at tariffs, making money, getting the country rich. But what's happening?
industrial warehouses, things like that, manufacturing.
What's going to happen in the stock market? Jerome Powell and the Fed is going to be forced to do what? Cut rates. Okay? Continue to cut rates. It's bullish for risk assets. DXY is also coming down right now. Bullish for risk assets. Why? Because the US dollar is losing value. Therefore, people are going to move their dollars into assets, risk assets, because they're going to appreciate against the dollar. Okay? Bond yields. Bond yields also coming down. What's that going to force people to do? Places like China, places like the huge U.S. investors, et cetera, they're going to rotate that money out of those bonds into what? Risk assets to get a better yield, right? Because the people don't want to get paid in bonds if the value of the dollar is going down. Therefore, the interest that they're getting paid on those bonds is also going down the value, right? So they're going to put it into risk assets. Where does all that excess U.S. dollars go? Into the S&P, into these world markets, right? So though you're seeing the drawdown right now as Jerome cuts rates and they stimulate the economy and they start to get this thing fucking juiced up again, they end QT, quantitative tightening. They end QT, start injecting liquidity back into the markets. This shit's about, nothing good, or there's a price to pay for everything. If you want to get massive moves to the upside and you want to be able to benefit from the most gains humanly possible, well, the lower you start, the higher you can go. So you get a drawdown like this, you need to take advantage, accumulate, understanding that there's going to be another leg up higher this year before we hit any kind of bear market or recession. So, no, yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about it before, how out of price point most stocks are for most people. The stock market has been straight up vertical since 1975. So realistically, for our generation, young people, most stocks are unaffordable. Most people aren't going to pay $250 for one Tesla stock. It's just not a good return on your investment. So people our age that don't hold a lot of those assets compared to older generations like boomers should be glad that the stock market took a 10% dip. That's your time to get in. That's your time to buy more. And in terms of retirement policies, 401ks and stuff, I understand it. I get it. That's people's retirement money. But at the same time, we think it's going to go up higher as well because just of everything going on. Some guy in here says we don't know what we're talking about on TikTok. You gotta love it.
Who's a fucking Joe Schmo stock analyst?
Yeah, he's a stock analyst, TikTok commenter. You must not be here for the 2 times a week streaming on charts.
The ultimate market professionals.
The market professionals. You must not see that stuff. That's all right though. You'll learn. But I know we're carrying on a little bit. We had a video we wanted to watch, but I mean, it's exciting times. I mean, I think it's realistically while you get the video up, it's growing pains. It's building a real economy, and what the economy was for the past 4 years was government injected jobs, and I think it's going to work out better because now a lot of those government jobs that they are cutting. All those smart people, and I guarantee there's a lot of smart people that work in the government in these areas that are now going to go into the private sector. They're going to go work for these big companies. They're going to go inject money in there.
Hold on, let's see this. Get this fucking breaking Tucker and
You say,
Doug.
yeah, yapping about the economy and you trade crypto for a living. You have no idea how any of this stuff works.
Well, how does it work then, Harry? That's hilarious. Literally what we do 24/7 all day, every single day for years.
Mm-hmm.
We have no idea how the economy works. Yeah. No, I have a pretty fantastic idea of how it works. It's also why we made so much money in it. So let's see. Screen 1, And then little Mr. Producer. Can you see? Oh, fuck. Hold on. I got Bauer sitting fucking reels over here.
Bauer.
Oh, yeah. You can see it, right? You can see my screen?
Yeah, it's just a white screen.
Can you see the video?
Yep.
Okay. And sound should be shared. We got double-digit live viewers on my end, so we got the fucking X algo cooking.
Let's go.
Feels like we're on the brink of...
Yeah, you guys can see at the top. Tucker and Doug McGregor, this is reacting to the ceasefire deal between Ukraine and Russia. They just proposed this. Ukraine accepted. They're waiting on Russia to accept.
Do you know who this Doug McGregor is? Does he go through kind of who he is, or because I don't know who he is?
I haven't seen this yet either.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Of something really catastrophic. I kind of can't shake that feeling. And by catastrophic, I mean some kind of global war. Hope that's not true. But let's just start with what just happened, which is a drone attack on Moscow by the Ukrainians that killed a number of Russians in Moscow. Mm-hmm. Who did that? Why? And what are its effects?
Come on, Taka.
It's a sick intro.
Well, that's an important question. I think the Russians are disappointed in us because they detected we're sincere in terms of wanting to end this conflict.
Trump is sincere. Yeah. I mean, that's true.
But they don't understand why he does not act to remove this regime, remove this man Zelenskyy and put a stop to it. There's this constant drumbeat about a ceasefire. Well, the Russians are highly organized and disciplined. They can stop whenever it makes sense to do so. The Ukrainians are not in the same category. They seem to be a rogue organization now. You know, we've got, 200,000 of them here in the United States, and I don't know how many thousands of them are working for the SBU, the Ukrainian Secret Police, that are now running around threatening everyone that has criticized Ukraine or opposed support for Ukraine.
An Alex Jones staffer was just murdered 2 days ago, who was on some list put together by the Ukrainian government or its supporters of critics. He was murdered outside of his house. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to think, given the number of assassinations they've pulled off or attempted, that he was killed by them. You think that's possible?
Well, I would be very worried about our president. You know, I think the president is very much at risk, and these people seem to know no sense of limitation. They're.
Did you see that? I did see that on X. Alex Jones's reporter.
Yeah. Got shot in front of his house. I did see that.
Absolutely ridiculous. Now Tucker's making this connection with the Ukrainian secret police because he was on that list to be murdered. I mean, that's insane. Coming to the U.S. and killing U.S. citizens, if that's true, allegedly, right?
I mean, that guy that they found in Palm Beach outside of Trump's golf course had connections to Ukraine. It's not crazy to think, you know, that guy, he would go to DC and march with Ukrainian flags and different things. So, I mean, yeah, who knows?
Capable of anything. So I hope the Secret Service is on its toes. I'm sure Kash Patel is well aware of this in the FBI. I just don't have any good feelings right now about the Ukrainians. I think they're done. They're finished. They've lost the war. So all of these are sort of acts of vengeance, if you will, last resort. Hurl whatever you have as deep as you can into Russia and just kill, murder, maim as many Russians as possible.
But what, to what end?
Well, to harm Russians and then try to create the illusion that there is some hope for them, that they can somehow or another mobilize more manpower and put more forces into the field. They can't. They're really scraping the bottom of the barrel. I think the issue right now is the following. The Russians have the initiative, strategic initiative. This war is effectively at an end as far as they're concerned in terms of having won it. They now have to make some decisions. So you have to put yourself not so much in the place of Zelenskyy. He's irrelevant. The Russians are not surprised by what he's done. I think they're surprised that we haven't intervened to try and stop it. That's what I think they're surprised about. So what they want now, the Russians, is an end to this nonsense. They have several options. They now have concentrations of forces in the northeastern part of Ukraine and down in the southeastern part. They can move at will at any time. They have enough force they can cross in Kherson. They can take Odessa. They can move forward and straight into Kiev. Whatever they do, they have to ask themselves, how far do we want to go to guarantee our security as Russians? And they have never really wanted to go very far. That's never been the intent. But over time, they've been pushed more and more and more to secure more territory to protect themselves. This latest act is probably convincing Russians that they should go straight to the Dnieper River, cross into Kiev, root out this regime, root and branch, cross down south and take Odessa, and turn rump Ukraine into a landlocked country. I'm sure there are people that are arguing for that. There are other Russians who are saying, the hell with this. Let's just crush Ukraine once and for all. This is a permanent cancer. It's not going to go away. People from the West are always going to try and go in and incite them. So let's march to the Romanian and Polish borders, right to Moldova, and be done with this. In the middle of this sits President Putin. And President Putin is nothing if not a very judicious person. He's a very thoughtful person. This is someone who does not act impulsively. I'm sure you saw that.
I have.
Everything is calculated. So he's going to sit there and say, what do I want to do? What makes the most sense for Russia? Set aside the emotion. And he also knows President Trump, and he says, President Trump wants an end to this. So do I. How do I nudge President Trump and say, help us? We want to end this just as much as you do. Help us a little bit. Can't you rid us of this man Zelenskyy and this little MI6 CIA-supported cabal that surrounds him? Can't you help us with this? But on the other hand, he's looking at his people, and they're saying, don't depend on anything the West promises. Don't believe anything the West says. So march to the Dnieper, cross the river, end this once and for all. This is the decision point. It's a strategic inflection point in the history of Europe, because you now have a Russian leader with the power, with the capability to do anything he wants. But
the average team spends 50% of their time doing work about work. That's a
good place to pause it, though, real quick. I think a few points. One, I think his point about Russia thinking, why hasn't the U.S. intervened and put an end to this yet? I think it's because, one, of what the last administration did. They showed so much support for Ukraine that if Trump just came in and completely reversed it, it would look really bad on America if we can't have our morals in line like that from president to president. Because one, I think, in some respects, Ukraine does have a right to its own sovereign land, if it isn't its own country. And the deal with, the NATO and the treaties that they signed in the past was that, Ukraine was Ukraine and Russia did invade Ukraine. So that's one point. So I think that's one reason why we haven't intervened yet, physically, to get in there and say, listen, we're done here. Stop it. Boots on the ground. American soldiers keeping peace. The second part that I found interesting was that he said that Russia now has a leader that pretty much has control over Europe because, one, economically, they fund oil and gas to Europe and prop them up economically. Second of all, militarily, we know that he could just keep going west and take all of Europe. Nobody's going to stop him besides the U.S. We've talked about this. U.S. funds over 60% of NATO. It's all of our equipment. It's all of our, strategic thinking and planning for the most part. So if he really wanted to, he could just, take all of Ukraine like this guy's saying. He could just do it, and people want him to do it. But it just comes at the relationship of the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And people say that Putin's a dictator. He's this horrible guy. Hey, listen. Is he a dictator? Technically, yeah. He doesn't have elections. He's been in power since the 90s. Fair, right? Is he a perfect leader? No. Well, is he a perfect democratic leader? No. Is he a strong leader? Is he a good leader? Yes. There's a lot of Russian people that absolutely adore him. This is why he's been able to stay in power for so many years. And he's very calculated, as this gentleman is saying, very calculated in the way that he operates. This is why he's been able to maintain power for so long. Has he killed political opponents? Yeah. Has he, allegedly, has he done things to, rig the elections and just listen, you could argue all these sorts of things. But the reality is that the administration that's in Ukraine is also not a legitimate administration in the sense that the U.S. had done a coup in Ukraine back in 2014 to get this administration in place. Zelenskyy gets elected. Zelenskyy fucking under martial law halts all elections, so now the people can't vote him out. He's also throwing his political opponents in jail, just like they did this past week to that guy running against him trying to call for elections. Boom, throws him in jail.
Oh, he got put in jail.
They threw him in jail.
I didn't see that.
Just a couple days ago, they threw him in jail. So Zelenskyy's political opponent gets thrown in jail a couple days ago. They're killing other political opponents or reporters. I believe it was an American reporter in Ukraine. I have to look at that again. They either threw him in jail or killed him. So my point is both sides have leaders that are to a degree illegitimate. So now you got to look at it and say, well, what makes sense to stop the killing? If you have to give up some of Ukraine to Russia, well, that's NATO's fault. That's the US's fault. That's Europe's fault because you pressured this war to happen by trying to bring them into NATO. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. What are you going to do at this point? You're just going to continue to let the country get absolutely obliterated until Putin has the entire country? So you got to make up your mind.
Yeah, because like he said, he could do that, but he hasn't done it up to this point. Why he hasn't done that, I'm honestly not sure why he hasn't done that yet. I think it's because it will strain the relationship with the U.S. and Europe, and he doesn't want to do that. Obviously, he's just trying to strategically work his way around parts of Ukraine that he wants. But yeah, very interesting. I like this guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Russian who doesn't want to march west. He doesn't want to rule Ukrainians.
There you go.
He's not a fool. He knows those people don't want to be ruled by Russians. So it's a difficult position, but he has to end it. And there's the other danger is who knows what comes next. They killed this Russian general who had a very prominent role, and his name escapes me right now, but he was killed recently. He had a very prominent role in identifying the attempts by the Ukrainians to build a dirty bomb and also to launch attacks on the nuclear power plants. He knows there are people over there capable of that kind of lunacy. So that also has to figure into his calculus.
It's got to be one of the most evil governments in the world.
It is. Well, look at what they've done to their own people. I mean, how many of these Ukrainians have died needlessly? The handwriting was on the wall 2 years ago. Why would you drag this thing out? And Putin has not wanted to drag it out, but he has also not wanted to give people in the West the impression that he's interested in doing anything more than removing the Ukrainian menace. In other words, he's not interested in conquest, doesn't want to march west. I mean, how many times can he and Lavrov say this nonsense and shut up Ann Applebaum and the rest of these
Why does Ann Applebaum
crazies
have any effect on anything? I mean, this is like one of the dumbest people in the United States. I don't understand.
Well, she's also married to the Polish foreign minister. And right now, the latest poll says that 86% of the Polish population opposes any Polish participation in a war against Russia. So, and even Tusk has said, if you think we're joining some sort of contingent to go into Western Ukraine, forget it, we're not going. So I think this whole facade is crumbling.
Is there any European population, so there are many European leaders who have suggested, some have said out loud, others have hinted, that they're going to send troops to fight Putin?
It's absurd.
Is there any
I dare you to let me build you a completely free e-commerce store.
Buddy, I dare you to make a better ad.
European population that wants that?
No, not a chance. I mean, the British are probably the furthest from Russia, and they all know what their army consists of today. It's a bad facsimile of what was there 200 years ago. It goes back to Bismarck's famous remark in 1879. He was asked by a British journalist, what would you do if the British army landed on the North German coast? He said, well, I'd have it arrested. And everyone was upset, but he was right. The British Army was about the size that it is now. And the German army at that point numbered what, 600,000 with a capacity to mobilize millions. So this is all nonsense. The same thing is nonsensical in France. All my friends in the French military, and I've got several, have told me, Douglas, this is absurd. The only thing the French army is prepared for is to go on safari in Africa.
Yeah, and they're pulling out of there.
And of course they're pulling out. This is a waste of time, money, and resources, all of it. The issue for Donald Trump is as follows, and I think this is what's most important for him to keep in mind. And his instincts are good. If he follows his instincts, he'll be fine. He needs to stop listening to the people around him. Number one, any war that breaks out today involving the United States and Russia, and whether or not Russia, we want it to be involved, Russia is involved in the Middle East. Russia is involved in Eastern Europe. Whatever happens, the war will expand. We will end up with multiple enemies arrayed against us. China, BRICS in general, and certainly Iran and other states in the Middle East. So the first thing is all wars will expand. So don't start one under any circumstances. It will expand out of control. The second thing is he's going to discover the hard way that we are grossly overstretched and overextended. The American military establishment is in no position to fight any kind of long war. Remember, we used to talk about the long war that we were supposed to fight? That was all nonsense. If you look at all of the simulations that involve us against Iran or us against any number of great powers, they all end in 2 weeks. Well, why does the war end in 2 weeks? Because in 2 weeks, we've exhausted everything that we've got. There's no more ammunition. There are no more missiles, no more rockets. I would say, in truth, right now, it's closer to 1 week, maybe 10 days. And we don't have this scientific industrial base with manufacturing capability that is humming along 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We can't match Russia, a nation of what, 140 million? Imagine that economic base producing in China. China is in a position today that we were in during World War II and in the aftermath. We were the productivity giant across the world. That's China. So you can't go to war with these people. You'll be buried by them with conventional weapons and ammunition. And anyone who thinks a nuclear exchange makes sense deserves to be shipped off to the nearest asylum. And I think Trump understands that. So those first two things, anything that we do expands out of control. Secondly, we're overstretched, overextended. Our forces are tired. They're very exhausted. The naval forces in particular have a lot of problems. Not just them, but they're the ones that are sitting out there on the front line right now. And then on top of that, you have the Air Force. And the Air Force cannot field thousands and thousands of fighters and bombers. We lost 18,000 bombers trying.
So what he's saying is exactly what Trump is trying to fix. We've completely deindustrialized our country, removed all of our production capability, all of our manufacturing capability, all offshores. Why? Because it became so expensive to be able to do business in the United States, so companies went elsewhere. Tariffs is trying to bring these companies this manufacturing ability, this ability to produce, mobilize, manufacture, most importantly, back to the U.S. so that this isn't the situation that we're in. What he's saying about China is a fantastic point. That's why the U.S. was so formidable in World War II and World War I, is because our industrialization of our country, we were able to produce more than any other country and go fight around the world. Now, what are we producing? Mm-hmm. We're not producing anything, and most of our scientists are fucking coming out of universities that are woke. They're not worried about national security. They're worried about doing studies about how kids should have fucking be able to get hormone blockers and bullshit like that. So
one thing I think, that I slightly disagree with this guy on is with, I agree definitely with the manufacturing with China. China could get weapons up and running so quick. Ships could get them built in a week. But one thing strategically, yes, I agree the U.S. is spread way too far across the globe. We need to condense back at home base for a little bit and like we said, reindustrialize and re-strategize in that aspect, get out of different pockets of the world that we don't need to be in. But I actually said this before, China hasn't fought a war in over 40 years. And when they did fight that war, I believe it was against Vietnam slightly I believe it was in the early 80s. I believe China was in there with Vietnam. Um, they were there for not even a year. So China doesn't have this real war experience. Like nobody our age has ever been out there on the front lines and fighting and strategically moving soldiers in airplanes strategically. Like the US does this, like that's what we do. Like we do this to literally like all around the world at all times in every continent on the world. So I think we have a slight advantage in that aspect because China hasn't really fought a real war in like a long. I don't know if they ever have. If I don't know if you could say that they've ever fought a real war like a modern war because yeah, they were involved in different conflicts throughout the early 1900s, but it's so different than modern weapons and EMPs and F-22s flying over your head. Like shit could get real really quick, and I don't know if they have that experience that the US has.
Right. That's a fair point. Yeah, because I'm trying to think right now, where's China fighting around the world? And I don't have anything that comes to mind. Yeah. The issue with China, though, the reason it's still so, especially with Russia, why it would be such a bad idea is because China supplies so many of the things that we use.
Yeah.
So they can
supply chain.
They just cut that off. And then they just have manpower. So even if they're shit at fighting, which you're right, I'm sure they are.
So just throw numbers at you.
They just have so many people that they will learn quickly enough to the point where it will not matter anymore after a few years of fighting.
Yep.
Similar to Russia, I guess Russia had more modern wars than China has for sure.
Yeah.
With Ukraine. But that was the big reason why Russia just decimated Ukraine is just they simply have hundreds of millions of people compared to tens of millions in Ukraine, if that. So naturally over time through attrition, which most of war and most of business is winning through attrition, right? If you're simply just able to outlast your opponent, you're going to win on a long enough time frame as long as you can drag it out that long.
Yep.
But that's a good point. I didn't think about that yet. China, I don't know what wars they fought modern. I can't think of any other than conflicts with Taiwan but that is not militarily.
But that's like the US and like Hawaii or Cuba, you know, it's right there, it's so close, it's close proximity. I know that's just a point that I'm sure the Chinese know, you know, that they're not like we said, they spent the last 40 years building up their country and, you know, building up the military, but they don't have that. You got to think the U.S. was in Afghanistan for 20 years, shipping soldiers, shipping cars, shipping ammo across the Atlantic Ocean back and forth for 20 years straight. We did that. So we have a good understanding of what it takes to go across the ocean and fight a war over there and come back and, you know, bring people. That's just like, especially China, they've never crossed the Pacific Ocean and like worked in that way because they would be fighting in the US. I'm sure, you know, they have a good relationship with Canada, and that's another thing that, you know, Trump's working to end, and Mexico with the cartels. And, you know, so there's a lot of moving parts to this that, you know, it's tough to get a grasp on from the public view if you don't have that intel like the government has.
Right. Last point I'll make, and we'll pop back on the video. The BRICS is another important thing that he mentioned here on this interview so far. That's something people got to pay attention to. That's BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And that's essentially the resource superpowers of the world, right? The resource superpowers. And the reason people got to understand that that's taking place, that alliance exists, is the US dollar being the world reserve currency is why the US have so much power. It's people are willing to hold the US dollar as a reserve currency. Our money matters. It makes us rich. Therefore, we can have big military presence around the world, military bases, spend money, import things, etc., right? That's why we're so rich. It's because our money is the world reserve currency. What BRICS is doing is they want to, on a long enough time frame, essentially create this alliance where their resources and their manufacturing capabilities, like in China, are what become more valuable than the US dollar in and of itself. Because if they can start to change the world reserve currency from the US dollar to something else and continue to sell their resources and their products, they're going to remain rich while the US is going to become poor because now our money isn't worth anything. The United States, our resource, our commodity that makes us rich is the US dollar. We export US dollars, and that's what makes us money through bonds and other things, etc. Other nations like China, Russia, India, Brazil, South Africa, they export real resources. That's how they make money. So we got to be very careful as a nation to fix our debt and fix the way that we make money, because as soon as the world reserve currency collapses in the US dollar and it switches to something else, because it's never forever, right? All these other empires over the last hundreds of years have had world reserve currencies as well, like the Dutch Empire, the Spanish Empire, British Empire. Yeah. Those currencies, it doesn't last forever. It's about 80 to about 120 years they'll last as the reserve currency. As soon as the U.S. loses the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, what is our resource that we're exporting? We got to fix that quick because it's nothing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Our export is U.S. dollars. As soon as U.S. dollar means nothing, we're cooked. We're cooked. So, yeah, we got to be careful.
Trying to penetrate German air defenses during World War II. We in the Royal Air Force, 18,000 bombers. Air defenses today in Iran are substantial, and they are capable. This is the S-400. They are layered with multiple kinds of missiles over a vast area and radars. We are going to lose aircraft. No one knows how many because we've never fought our way through it. But we don't have thousands to lose. So in an attrition setting, we can't win. And unfortunately, when you're 6,000 miles away from home, it's attrition. You can't replace rapidly. You can't reload rapidly. You can't resupply rapidly. Logistically, it's a disaster. Then finally, you see what's happened in the market recently. Dropped 900 points. What do you think happens if there's a war in the Middle East or in Eastern Europe? It'll just intensify the sell-off. Everything tanks. All confidence will be lost. No one in their right mind at this point should be talking about a war. We should be talking about disengagement. And Zelenskyy, frankly, the way he was treated, I think President Trump was far too gentle. I'm surprised that two giant Secret Service agents did not come in, pick him up, and remove him from the office. But the way he handled Zelenskyy is the way he's got to handle Netanyahu. Because if he doesn't, Netanyahu will drag him into the abyss. Because he wants this war in the Middle East come hell or high water. And it's not in their interest.
What war?
The war with Iran, the war with everybody. I mean, you've seen these settings where Netanyahu sits at a table and he's got everybody around him in his cabinet. And he says, this is our opportunity to settle with everyone. We're fighting on 5 fronts. No, we're fighting on 7 fronts. And he starts ticking off, everyone from the Houthis to the militias in Iraq and Syria and now Iran and so forth. If you look at the map today, he's trying to occupy Syria all the way up to the edge of Damascus.
Experience your new PC by Digital Store.
Damascus. And Erdogan, who is a very clever but slippery character, has already said, forget it. We're not going to tolerate that in southern Syria. So he's pushing the envelope to the very edge. In Damascus, there are 3 great Islamic cities in the region. One is Cairo, the other is Jerusalem, and then Damascus. They're not going to surrender Damascus to the Israelis. So whatever happens, the Turks will eventually become involved. They'll march in.
So, I mean, that creates a kind of structural problem because Turkey is a member of NATO.
I don't think so, because I don't think NATO matters.
Maybe you're right.
I don't think it has for a long time.
Well, it matters in a material sense. We just use the name NATO to wage a war against Russia for 3 years that we lost.
Yeah.
So, but that would be the end of NATO, right?
Well, what we're talking about will end everything that we're accustomed to, the rules-based order, which just means our global hegemony in military and economic terms. Everyone in BRICS is now being forced together. We're forcing cohesion on BRICS as an alternative to our financial system, which we use to bully everybody. So that's all that BRICS is about. But now BRICS is going to become increasingly militarized because we're seen as this rogue state that is willing to put everything at risk in order to retain its position of dominance. That's catastrophic for us. We don't want to go down that road. And that's why I think most of us voted for President Trump. We saw him as someone who would say no and diverge from that path. But we don't know right now. It's not clear. He has not made it clear what he wants. He has said he wants a settlement with Russia. He wants normalization with Russia. Okay, if you really want that, you've got to act in a way that demonstrates conclusively that you support that. That means end all the military aid right now to the Ukrainians. Period. Done. Number two, get all of the Americans out of Ukraine immediately. Everybody. Intelligence, civilians, contractors. I mean, this has been another contracting bonanza in Ukraine, just as Afghanistan was.
And Iraq.
End that.
So the people who built this country built it because they wanted...
Yep. That's what he was saying with the financial system, is if we lose that, we're cooked.
Mm-hmm.
And the biolabs that you built there. And so the Ukrainian military has been selling, I think everyone's aware of this, it's true, a large percentage of these weapons onto international arms markets, and they've wound up with some of the worst people in the world and destabilized the world. But there's been no attempt by any agency in the U.S. government that I'm aware of to keep track of where they are. And moreover, the CIA has lied about that. So,
well, Tucker, let's face it, the CIA is a black hole. We don't really know what goes into it, and we're not really sure what comes out of it other than destruction. You know, wherever the CIA dabbles and moves in, we end up with subversion, revolution, disintegration. That's everything we touch, literally. That's why it was such a stroke of genius to get rid of USAID. USAID was helping to fund all the nonsense along with National Endowment for Democracy. Thank God for those things. But I don't know about the gentleman Radcliffe who is in charge of the CIA. I don't know what his march orders are. But we have a very serious problem over there. This has been operating for a very long time in isolation from any accountability and any real oversight. So that needs to be stripped down to the bare bolts and find out what's really happening over there. Everybody talks about the Epstein files and all these kinds of things. I'm sure it'd be nice to know the truth about all of that, but there's much worse going on in the CIA globally, and we need to put a stop to it. But these are actions that we have to take not just for ourselves, but to demonstrate to the rest of the world that we're serious. We want an end to these conflicts. We're not interested in waging war in everybody else's country. We're not interested in planting new governments that are puppet regimes in other people's countries. That's what it's about. That's what we've got to do. If we don't do that, we're going to eventually be dragged into a confrontation with a substantial portion of the world.
And then we don't prevail.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. But keep in mind, what about the American people? There's nobody here. We walk outside, find anybody who says, well, there's a train leaving, for Ukraine. You can get all your equipment, draw it right there in the train station, get on and go and fight Ukraine. See how many people show up. Oh, well, why don't we bomb Iran? Would you like to be part of?
Exactly. People who are calling for war would never go to war for themselves. Get it!
The strike package, we have a seat for you on a B-2 and you can watch the bombs go off. Would you like to do that? Nobody wants to do that. There's no interest in this country in any of that crap. But people in this country are damn well interested in what's happening on the Mexican border, and I just spent 3 days down there. And they're damn well interested in what's happening in Mexico because they know that that is a cesspool of barbarism, savagery, criminality. And that's our existential threat. Not China, not Russia, not Iran, not anywhere. We can manage those things. President Trump can manage those things. This thing down on the Mexican border is really at a boiling point. We need to understand that.
Tell me, what does that mean?
Well, what it means is that the cartels run everything. I mean, we hear about this President Scheinbaum in Mexico. Forget it. You know, she controls, 40 square kilometers in Mexico City. This whole thing is an organized crime state. Everyone in Mexico knows the truth.
Yep.
You know, if you go to Mexico City, my oldest son was just down there for a month, and he speaks very fluent Spanish, and he was talking to lots of people, and he loved the place, loved Mexico City, loves Mexicans. But they'll tell you flat out, well, don't go there, and don't go here, and don't go there, and don't ride in this cab, and don't take this automobile, don't go to that airport. You know, everybody knows the truth. Everybody knows who operates what, who controls what. And if you navigate through this maze of invested power of the cartels, you can survive. But if you accidentally cross into their territory and are seen as a potential problem in any way, shape, or form, you're dead. But at the same time, you've got whole families of these cartels, people that work for them that are being treated for dental needs, medical problems, whatever else. I mean, you join the cartel, you get free health care, you get all of this. It's bizarre, but it's real. And you pointed out the weapons going down there are serious. I was down there and we talked to several people who were border patrolmen, also talked to some Texas Guard people. They said, we just go 100 yards on the other side into Mexico, and behind the ridgeline over there, you'll see all the weapons, all the RPGs, the Javelin missile systems that have found their way to Mexico.
Javelin missile system?
Yeah, we've got it. They've got those things over there.
From Ukraine?
Yeah, sure. Well, we sent over, I don't know how many, 1,000 of them? And several hundred were captured by the Russians. And then I'm sure several were sold on the black market. I mean, about 50% of everything that showed up there ended up somewhere that didn't belong. You know, it's just one huge corrupt industry in Ukraine. And the longer we feed it cash, the worse it will get. So you've got to starve it of cash, starve it of ammunition, and end it. The Ukrainian people will ultimately thank you for it. They've had enough. I don't care what various people say. They're tired of it.
What do you think the actual losses are on both sides in that war?
I think the Russians have lost, well, when they say Russians, let's put it this way. The Russians, 90 to 100,000 dead. They may have lost another 10 to 20,000 non-Russians from within the military establishment. And that's one of the great achievements, by the way, of President Putin, has been to weld this force together that includes large numbers of Muslim Turks who are extremely competent fighters, very tough. In fact, the Chechen fighters are cleaning out Kursk right now, Kursk Oblast, because the Ukrainians made a mistake. They hurled large numbers of drones down into Chechnya and killed a number of people, and that just lit a fuse that is now exploding.
Who'd want to fight with Chechnya?
I certainly don't. No normal man wants to fight the Turks.
Right. I mean, those two wars, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I sort of followed it in the news. So maybe not want to mess with the Chechens at all.
Never, ever. Absolutely not. And there's a good, healthy relationship right now between the Muslims and the Orthodox Christians.
Yes, I've noticed.
It's a very positive thing. He's done that very well. There's a lot to be learned from that. I think we could do something similar in some respects. But having said that, the problem is right now, 100,000 plus 10 to 20,000 of the others, that's about it. But on the Ukrainian side, I can certainly account through the various sources I trust for 1.2 million dead Ukrainian soldiers. Dead.
Wow.
There are those
So you
out
think it's
there.
10 to 1?
Oh, easily. And that's because over the last year.
Well, that is just shocking.
Yeah, but that over the last year, it's grown. In other words, the losses have.
There are 101 ways that you could get clients for your agency.
Tucker making $1
coaching, or
billion
consulting
off
business.
these ads.
Just-
You got the Giga fucking package on. The Giga ad pack. The fuck?
Tripled and quadrupled every day. You know, you've talked to people. You can watch people like Larry Johnson and Scott Ritter and others. They all have different numbers and different sources, but they all agree 1.2 million is about right. There are some who think 1.5 million is closer.
Dead.
Yes. And what happens at the end of wars?
In a country of under 50 million, so but 25 million in the country now, I think, ish.
There's nothing left. That's why the notion that they can build anything now is ridiculous. And how many millions are overseas? What, 15 to 20 million have left the country? There are 2 million plus Ukrainians in Russia, and probably 15 plus million in the West. And most of them have made it clear they have no intention of ever going back. So this is killed, for all intents and purposes, for the foreseeable future, the Ukrainian nation. But these things happen at the end of wars. Most of the Germans killed in the military towards the end of the Second World War were killed in the last 9 months. Max Hastings wrote a book about it. I can't remember the exact title. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't a bad illustration of what was going on. When armies are retreating and they've lost their air and missile defense, they've lost their logistics. In other words, the units are breaking down because they can't feed themselves. They can't protect themselves. So it becomes not immediately every man for himself, but the units try to fight their way through to get back home. And that's what the Ukrainians have done. But as they're doing that, the problem today is with all of these unmanned systems and the surveillance that the Russians have, they can be killed in great numbers as they're running away, as they're leaving. And they're not running away because they're cowards. Nobody will tell you the Ukrainians are cowards. It's absolutely unacceptable. These are very brave, courageous people, just like the Russians. But they have no chance. And so they're being driven in front of the advancing Russians. And people say, well, why are the Russians advancing so slowly? Because from the very beginning, Putin has not wanted to kill large numbers of Orthodox Christian Slavs. It's not been his aim.
Yeah, well, it's definitely the aim of the West.
Oh my! Look at these biolabs. Isn't that pretty clear from what we've seen?
It's pretty clear. And this whole, if you take 3 steps back, I mean, Ukraine is not even the point. The point is destroying Putin.
And if you can
killing Russia and breaking it up.
And if you kill large numbers of Ukrainians, I think for many of the people behind this, that was seen as a collateral damage or even a bonus. I hate to make that point, but
I agree completely. Killing Christians around the world is the actual subtext to our foreign policy. Someone just handed me this. This is just out. Ukraine backs U.S. proposal for 30-day ceasefire with Russia. I'm going to read this to you if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. Ukraine, quote, expressed readiness to accept a U.S. proposal for an immediate 30-day ceasefire with Russia. The two countries said in a joint statement after a key meeting between U.S. and Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia. A ceasefire, if implemented, would be a major diplomatic breakthrough. This is Rubio, quote, the Secretary of State. The ball is now in their court. We hope the Russians will reciprocate. The U.S. agreed to lift its suspension on intelligence sharing with Ukraine and resume weapons shipments to the country, which were paused 10 days ago.
That makes no sense.
After weeks of pressuring the Ukrainians, the U.S. side signaled the pressure is now on Russia. Quote, if the Russians say no, we will know what the impediment is here, said Marco Rubio. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz said Ukraine not only accepted the U.S. proposal, but also presented its principles for a comprehensive peace deal, which includes security guarantees that it requires. Waltz also made clear to his team that all fighting needs to stop, not just air and missile strikes. Before you negotiate, you need to stop shooting at each other. That's what the president wanted to see, said Marco Rubio. The U.S. and Ukraine also agreed to conclude as soon as possible, quote, a comprehensive agreement for developing Ukraine's critical mineral resources. It wasn't clear if this meant that they would sign the deal that they'd been talking about. Steve Witkoff, President Trump's global envoy, is visiting Moscow on Thursday to meet with President Putin and discuss this. What's your response to that?
Well, I think there's some positive things in there, but we're missing the boat with the Russians again. We don't understand that if Ukraine is going to be neutral, why are we continuing to supply it with weapons at this stage? It's the Ukrainians that have to stop fighting. The Russians will stop when they see evidence that the Ukrainian force is defeated or quits. That hasn't happened yet, not with these attacks that just occurred over Moscow. So the Russians are asking the question, you're the ones keeping this monster alive. You created the monster is fatally wounded, and you keep putting it on life support. Do you really want an end to this war? I mean, imagine if we were dealing with a similar enemy in Mexico, and we found out that the Russians and the Chinese had provided vast quantities of equipment and assistance to the Mexicans who were trying to fight us and regain control of the Southwest. And we defeated them and driven them back out of the country. And they refused to stop. They continue to fight. We said, well, if you want this war to end, tell them to stop fighting, put down their weapons, and back out. And if they won't do that, then we have to do what? March into Mexico and crush them. I mean, this is the best analogy that I can come up with to make people understand what we're dealing with. So if you want normalized relations with Russia, go back to what we said at the beginning. End the military support for this heinous regime. This is guilty of all sorts of terrible war crimes anyway. All the things that Russia was accused of are things that the Ukrainians have done. So let's get out of this.
Well, they tried to, and they assassinated people. They tried to assassinate a couple people I know personally.
Yes.
Well, fact, not guessing. So, I consider that government, not the Ukrainians. I think the Ukrainians, as you said, are valiant and decent. And an awful lot of them are Christians. I know a lot of Ukrainians, and I couldn't think more highly of them. But I think that their government is totally evil.
Completely.
And so here's the thinking as far as I understand it. What do I know? But my strong sense is that the Trump White House wants an end to this war. The president campaigned on it. He thinks it's within his grasp. He also wants a more normalized relationship with Russia. He grieves over Russia's now permanent alliance with China. He sees how bad that is. It's not fixable. But bringing Russia a little bit closer back to the West is a good thing. I think I'm describing his thinking fairly. But for the purposes of making a deal, the thought is that you can't make a deal from a position of weakness. And so you have to show your teeth in order to get the other side to come to better terms. That's the idea behind throwing more weapons to Ukraine. Well, how do you assess that?
It's delusional. It's leading down the wrong path. If you want this to end, then stop it. You stop supplying it and get our people out of Ukraine. Make it very clear we're out of this. No more weapons, no more cash. We're finished. The British and the French can't come in and make up for that. Neither can the Germans. So that's all nonsense. You saw this Euro summit. They're going to assemble, almost $1 trillion to beef up defense in these countries. Good luck. I don't see that occurring in Europe at all, because the average Europeans are saying, for what? They look at what's happening and they no longer believe this myth. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. They're going to be on I-95 in northern Jersey tomorrow night. Come on, the Russians are coming.
We have to kill them here. You hear Republicans say this all the time.
Crap.
Republican senators, really the worst group in the country, in my opinion, short of Antifa. But, it's a really good deal for us because we're killing all these European Christians there, so we don't have to kill them here.
Yeah.
And they say that out loud.
Well, they said that Lyndon Johnson was like, well, if we don't kill them here now in Vietnam, we're going to be fighting them in Los Angeles. So we got to get them now. Come on, that was ridiculous. I heard General Abizaid make the same stupid statement in 2004. Well, we have to kill these Islamist terrorists here in Iraq, or we'll be fighting them in our own country. It's all crap. It's the same old set of lies. It's sort of like the perpetual neocon narrative. It's 1936. We all have to band together. There's another Hitlerite on the horizon. This is a standard sort of gruel that is pitched to the American people over and over and over again in the Anglosphere in general, whether it's Great Britain,
it's true.
United States, or Australia. It's all nonsense. We got to get past this and once and for all bury it. If we really want this to stop, this is not about winning or losing. I think that's another problem. We got to make sure this is a win for the president. A win for the president is an end to this war, period. Mm-hmm. Number two, what are our interests in Ukraine? Tell me what they are. What are the strategic interests that justify intervention in that country?
Why can't you stay organized? I've experienced this myself, and it's
the
called
interest
chronic
would be the
impulse control,
resources.
where you
It would be the mineral resources in the land, because they changed the law in Ukraine to be able to allow U.S. corporations to start buying up farmland in Ukraine. So clearly they wanted something to do with the resources that are in that country, which is also a big reason why Crimea was important for Russia to take over because of all those natural resources. It's money.
Yeah, and there's ports there.
Yep.
A lot of ports.
So clearly there's a, what's it called? Clearly, crypto, huh? BTC over 84K ski.
Back on the up ski.
Yeah, reclaim of 84K is big. Hilarious. What did Logan say? Oh yeah. That is a bit bullish. Yeah, we might
again though, like again, if you're gonna be putting all that resources and U.S. U.S. coming in and buying up land and stuff, that's not gonna make Russia happy. It's not what Russia wants. They don't want the U.S. in Ukraine just setting up shop. Like, all right, yeah, we're gonna start extracting minerals. We're gonna start doing this, doing that. So, I agree with this guy. I don't understand if you're gonna sign a ceasefire. Why are we sending you more weapons? That kind of defeats the whole purpose of the ceasefire, doesn't it? Like,
I agree. No, I agree for sure. Yeah. Why? So Tucker was saying, oh, well, because you got to be able to negotiate from a position of power. You got to show your teeth so you can get the best peace terms that you possibly can. But I agree with this guy. Well, so then what are we actually fighting this for? Economic gain? Because if that's what it is, then say it. Okay, are we doing it for the resources there in Ukraine? Do we want to be able to get more land, get this mineral deal from Ukraine? Like, what are the actual intentions? Because if the actual intentions are stop the war, stop the killing, stop people from dying, then stop sending weapons. And then now I can sympathize, I can understand the mindset of, well, we can't just roll over, otherwise we're going to get decimated on these peace talks because then we're going to have 0 foot to stand on.
yeah.
Understandable. I can understand that, and I'm sure there's much more qualified military minds that are, behind this. Hopefully, I would hope.
And like he said, if Russia just steamrolls all of Ukraine, then you don't even have a deal to be made with the mineral deals and stuff. So it could be, you don't have nothing to work with.
Exactly. Yeah, then there is no talks. It's just, okay, shit, it's gone. Whoops.
Yeah, it's done.
All right, we can rip more. What do you want to do, like 10 more minutes?
Yeah, let's keep going. What is that? Can you see the chapters? Like, what are some of the chapters? I see there's a few chapters coming up. We got
Russia, Ukraine, pro ceasefire. Can Europe be saved? American politicians on cartel payroll. That would probably be interesting.
How long is that? Like 10 minutes? Let's watch that.
10 minutes exactly. Look at that.
Yeah, let's watch that.
Cartel's real. When I was in Mexico, I'm telling you, I told you about this. I went into actual Mexico, and I was with a girl and her family there. And it's completely different than these resorts and shit you go stay at in Mexico. The cartel's real there. That shit they run that shit. It is it's an issue. It's going to be a problem that the U.S. is going to have to deal with.
There are the cartels in Mexico. And by the way, and then mainlining it into the country, there are the cartels in Mexico. And by the way, they have a lot of support here. Their influence reaches right up into DHS, all the way to Congress. There are so many people on the payroll. I'm told after my visit down to the border, it's frightening.
American officials on the payroll of Mexican drug cartels.
Yeah.
See? Makes sense. That's why the borders are so fucking open and then being able to get all these drugs in here.
Duh.
Yeah, bro. The cartel is the mafia 2.0. Mafia in the U.S. was paying off judges, paying off politicians, doing all their illegal everything. It's the same thing with the cartel. It's the same thing. Just organized crime organization. Money talks. They take money. They get their drugs. They get their people into the States.
The other thing, as an example, I said, well, have we stopped everything? And, you talk to sheriffs, and I went down there and talked to a great man, and he's a huge supporter of President Trump, as I am. And I walked into his office, this building, and here's this life-size photograph of Donald Trump pointing at you. I thought it was Trump. I mean, I really did. I said, my God, how'd the president get here ahead of all of us? It was about the same time that Vance and Tulsi and Hegseth went to Eagle Pass. And this was Kinney County, and this was Sheriff Coe. And Sheriff Coe says, oh, things have gotten so much better. That's right. The optics are much better. There are no longer thousands of people marching over the border anymore. But what about the legal ports of entry? The Border Patrol has nothing to do with the legal ports of entry. Those are controlled by police authorities, customs police, and others. And I said, well, what's the problem with the legal ports of entry? Well, most of the drugs and a lot of the human trafficking comes through the legal ports. I said, well, how does that happen? They said, well, if somebody comes up to you and you make normally $3,000 or $4,000 a month, and they say, here's $20,000, let us through, you get through. And that's part of the problem on the border. So I said, well, what do you think needs to happen? And people told me privately, you need to get the U.S. Army on the border. Bring back the regular army and then rotate them.
And the Army's not on the border.
No, they just sent a brigade, and that's fine. But we have, I think, 6 or 7 of these brigades of motorized infantry, these light armored vehicles. Put them on the border. We need 40, 50, 60,000 troops down there. We need some aviation brigades down there. Now, they don't all have to stay there forever, but they need to stay there until the barriers are built and the border is secure. And then we need to come up with a system where we periodically rotate units down there to back up the police, back up the Border Patrol. Why? Because the cartels are infinitely better armed than the police and the Border Patrol.
They have Javelin missile systems.
Yes. Yes. They've got unmanned systems for ISR, for intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. They've got armed unmanned systems. And the thing that nobody seems to understand is what happens when we finally stop it. You stop the drugs. You stop the human trafficking along the border. Now, they're going to try and go around you. They'll try to use the coastal waters. And I think the Coast Guard belongs in the United States, not in the South China Sea, not in the Persian Gulf. They belong here, and they're not. They need to bring them back and get them.
We have the Coast Guard in the Persian Gulf?
Yes, absolutely. We got to get them back into the coastal
coast
waters.
Are we guarding?
Well, not ours. Let's be frank. That's the problem. And they're going to try and find other ways. They will fly people up to North America. You know Michael Yon. He studied all of this.
I know him well, yeah.
He's done great work down there. All these camps that the American federal government has actually helped to fund these non-governmental organizations in order to sponsor millions of people to invade our country and give them phones. You know the routine.
I do.
They're still there. Those camps are still there. Somebody needs to go down and torch those things. In other words, it needs to be scorched earth down there. Get rid of this. And you have to put the Army on the border to ensure that these barriers are built and you have truly a secure border. You need the Coast Guard at sea for the same purpose. Now, once that's done, you can ratchet back. However, what happens when the money stops? You're in the cartels. You make billions of dollars every year. Truckloads of $800,000 in greenbacks go across the border from north to south. What happens when that stops? We'll be at war, Tucker. We'll be at war. These people aren't going to go gently into the night. We're cutting them off.
No matter where you are politically, I think every American knew ratio and average thing lost. That's the party that ruled Mexico from. They didn't when the PRI lost the party that ruled Mexico from the revolution up until Vicente Fox. Mm-hmm. They had deals with, they had sort of had a stasis. Mm-hmm. And the second that arrangement collapsed, the country fell in. I mean, they had a more reform-minded government, but the country fell into basically a civil war that it's been in ever since. Right? I mean, the cartels and now they run the country.
They run the country, yeah. And of course, we have the problem with arguably 50 million illegals inside the United States. 30 million is what most of the people watching the borders and watching the camps down in Darien in Panama say have come into the country. And we want to deport these people. And absolutely, we need to. It will help us enormously. I mean, how are we paying for their health care? How are we paying for all the things that they want and need? Well, we're printing money. This is a burden on our society, not a benefit. Everybody says, well, that's not true. Their immigrants are a benefit. Legal immigrants can be a benefit. Not these people. They're not a benefit, and they need to go. Well, how do you do that? And historically, when Herbert Hoover directed the removal of 9 million Mexicans after the stock market crashed to open up jobs for Americans. Remember, Americans won't do those jobs? Guess what? When there was no work, they were going to do all of those jobs. And he said, I've got to get these people out before Americans take shots at them because they want their jobs. Okay, he moved 9 million out. FDR moved 3.5 million. Truman moved out over 2 million. Eisenhower moved out another 1.5. How did this happen? Put the Army in charge. The United States Army, supplemented by the police and the National Guard.
Do not pay somebody to build you a Shopify store, because I'm going to do it free with 20 handpicked products by myself.
And they organized it and executed it. We've got to do that. How many of those people are sleeper cells for various terrorist organizations around the world that want to do us harm? Well, I'm sure Tulsi Gabbard can come on here and talk about it. She knows more about it than probably any of us at this point. But I don't know how many, but I know there are a lot. And we should be very concerned about that. And I don't see anybody expressing that concern anywhere. And which is one of the reasons I went down there with some really great people to show me around and explain these things. Now, I want everybody to understand the people that you've got on the border, with very few exceptions, are trying very hard to do the right thing. All these sheriffs are. But they all admit privately that the problem is bigger than they are. And that's why the federal government has to have a role. The federal government also has to have a zone where it can operate. You need at least a mile, mile and a half, 2 miles into the United States where you can take over and arrest people that get through. Right now, we have this big problem with you get into the United States and everything changes. That's got to stop. Excuse me. All of these things are far more important than what is happening today in the Middle East. When I say far more important, I'm saying for us as Americans. I'm not saying that what happens in Gaza is irrelevant. It isn't. It's terrible. What's happening on the West Bank is terrible. We should be doing everything in our power to stop this mass murder. The American people don't see it. They don't hear about it. They don't even hear about what happens to Christians all over the Middle East that are being killed. I mean, the photographs that come to me in a steady stream from people over there are frightening. They're murdering Alawites. They're murdering Orthodox Christians. They're murdering Roman Catholics in Syria. We helped to create this chaos in Syria. So did Netanyahu. At some point, our friend Erdogan needs to come down and restore some measure of order. I think that's inevitable. Somebody's got to take control of that place and run it. It's not going to run itself. But these things are not our things. Does that make sense?
Of course it does. Of course it does. No, our priorities have been hijacked by other countries. And it's distressing because it does seem like the problems that we face now, will determine whether the United States, remains.
Makes it.
Yeah, thank you. Nicely. Right. But makes it. So,
is it still it? Hold on.
So just to bottom.
So yeah, go ahead.
That's that's a crazy point. And like he said, was with the immigrants, and how many of them have loyalty to the cartels that are coming across the border? He said 30 million is what people guess that came over the past few years. How many of them are loyal to the cartels and helped raise them, or help went education and everything, or brought them to the U.S.? Is it 1 million? Is it 2 million? Is it a third? Like, how many of the people are loyal to the cartels that are here illegally and aren't going to go without a fight? And like he said, once you do cut off the money, you stop the drugs, you stop the trafficking, you get all the immigrants out. You think they're just going to roll over and they're going to be like, oh, well, okay, we're done now. We gotta figure something else out. Like, no, they have. You said they have javelin systems. They have these advanced weapons systems that they're going to fight. They're going to try to keep their money coming in. Because how else are they going to make money?
Exactly. And here's the other thing to think about with the cartels as well. The people that are trying to get away from them and get into the country and do what they're supposed to do for the cartel, they're not going to go back without a fight. It's not going to be something that, like this guy was saying, that the cartel is just going to roll over and the people that are aligned with the cartel are just going to roll over. Why? Because even those that are not involved with them directly, well, no, they are involved with them directly, but they're not necessarily in the business of selling the drugs themselves or making the money themselves. They're more so a cog in the system, or some of these girls that are sex trafficked into the U.S., sex trafficked into the different parts of Mexico. They're not going to want to go back or flee or get away from the cartel's influence because they're not able to. Okay.
Yep.
So I'll give you an example, real world example. One of the times I was in Mexico, right? You see things, you talk to people, you learn about what's going on down there. This is why it's so important to travel and understand what's actually going on in these regions and why these people have these kinds of problems. The girls who get sex trafficked with the cartel, they get into prostitution and these sorts of things thinking that this is going to be a way for them to make quick money, take care of their incredibly poor, impoverished family. Typically, these girls are doing it to take care of their parents, take care of their siblings, which is disgusting and so sad that they have to do this and they resort to this. But this is what happens when people are in life or death situations. In the US, we're worried about what fucking pronouns people are supposed to use for you. Fucking idiots, not understanding that people are literally starving for food. The last thing they're thinking about is what the fuck pronoun this guy's going to call me. No, they're worried about how am I going to eat? How are my children not going to die? So
literally a few hundred miles away across the border.
Few hundred miles away.
Not even that far away.
And your biggest problem is what fucking pronoun you're going to be called. The disrespect for our country, the disrespect for the opportunity that we have here is outrageous. These people who think that they're entitled to everything are idiots. As soon as you put them in a cartel, let's say, environment, and they're having to deal with the cartel, you think they're going to be looking at them like, you misgendered me. No, you got to call me this. You got to call me that. No, do you think they're even going to think about what fucking sex they are? No, they're going to think about, am I going to be alive today or tomorrow? Morons. The point I was making is these girls and these, so not only the girls who are into the prostitution, but the gentlemen or the people, not gentlemen, I call them gentlemen, the people that get into the selling of the drugs, you can't just leave the cartel. These girls, they'll try to flee when they're done doing the prostitution. They've made enough money or they've had enough of it. They'll try to leave. Cartel finds them, boom, bullet in the back of them. They kill them. Once you start, you can never leave. There's no leaving. This is real. They will literally kill these girls. They try to get away, boom, kill them. It's you're stuck for the rest of your life, and this is what these people run into when they deal with these cartels. So that's why you can't negotiate with these people. You can't allow this to happen in the U.S. because it's going to be a massive problem. These people, it's going to be life or death for them. So
I saw, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I saw there was a new movie that came out. I forget the name of it, but I watched the trailer for it and it looked pretty legit. Right over the border from El Paso. I forget what the town is called, like Jesus or something. But they were showing how there's legitimate tunnels that run under the ground. These cartels have created tunnels that could get people into the United States just by tunnels now. And like he said, the legal port of entry is still one of the most difficult things to handle because there are people that are going to be coming here legally every day. People have their passports, they're coming in, they're flowing in, Americans going out, coming back in, Mexicans that have passports or visas that they could get in legally. But then, they're strapping drugs under the car, they're hiding people in the cars. And like he said, the way to do it is to put the military in there, create a buffer zone where there's military for 1 mile, go through a couple of checkpoints, have people rotating so that they're not bought, and just allowing people to come in, just legally come through because they're paid out. Okay, when this guy comes in with this license plate, make sure you send him in. So how do you combat that? You put people in there rotating every week or every day, whatever it is, so they're not at the same place. And they're U.S. military, so they have an obligation to always have the U.S. interest in, or it's treason and you're out. So yeah, it's a very complex problem. And like he said, this is one that we actually have to pay attention to because it's literally at our doorstep. And the cartels are, a problem. They are now domestic terrorists, like we said. So they're probably in the scope at all times now. With we saw Vance down there, Tulsi Gabbard were down there, Pete Hegseth was down there. So they're making it a priority. They said it The illegal crossings are at all-time low again, and that's good. That's, one part of the problem, but the main problem, like we said, is drugs, violence, human trafficking coming over the border.
It is. It's going to be a problem. It's going to continue to make its way into our country as long as they can continue to fund politicians, fund institutions, get their people into the country. It's going to be a problem. All right, Harry. Well, that was a fucking fantastic stream. Jake.
Yeah, it was.
Jake just said great stream in the chat. Absolutely, my friend. Good to see you, Jake. Been loyal for a long time now. We're still over double-digit live viewers on X, on Kick, everything. Some fine gentlemen just watching Pompino and the gentleman cook. I wonder how was the TikTok stream? Were they pissed on TikTok today?
No, we didn't really have to. Besides that one guy when we first started yapping about the economy.
Yeah, Mr. the e-com guru. Okay.
We had a good amount of viewers come in.
Beautiful. All right. If you guys aren't already inside of the Taylor's Code, link is in the description. Link is in the bio. Join the network in University for the Ultimate Professional. I say this for years now, from when I developed sales teams to developing this network with Bobby and Logan. People go to college and they'll spend $100,000 at this point now, $200,000 just to get an education from somebody who doesn't actually know how to make money. Just a professor who's making a salary, drives a Honda Civic, teaching you about finance. Okay, really? That's where you want to get your education? That's the network that you want to develop? No. You're willing to spend all this money to go to school to get an education that's not actually going to show you how to get rich.
Yeah. To maybe get a job.
Exactly. To maybe. They don't even guarantee you a job. You join the Taylor's Code, I guarantee you an opportunity to be able to make money. And if you want to get into the sales industry, I can guarantee you a sales opportunity. Guaranteed. Yeah. Guess what? $50 a month. And for the first month, in March alone, only in March 31st, 11:59 p.m., code expires. If you sign up for the Taylor's Code and you join the network, it's going to be $40 off of your first month. So it's going to be code TC444. Okay, TC, Taylor's Code, right? If you guys couldn't figure that one out, TC444. Apply that code at checkout. Go to the website. Join the network. We're going to get you into the private Discord. We'll get you making money either in e-commerce with Bobby, in crypto with myself, and then we also have the fitness campus with Logan. Teach you actually be a formidable human being, because all this money, all this mindset, all this shit that we talk about doesn't mean anything if your health is in the tank. Doesn't matter if you're on your fucking deathbed. All the money in the world doesn't matter. So become a part of the network for the Ultimate Professional. We're actually doing an event this weekend. We got a bunch of the gentlemen getting together. We're taking the whips out. I'm going to have the videographer come out, get a bunch of content, show you guys how we're moving, how we're living. And this is the whole point of us building this network, is so now that we can continue to get like-minded individuals who are doing well, making money, having success, and taking all the sports cars out for a ride, going to these cigar lounges, introducing ourselves to new people, making new business connections, continuing to being able to make more money with each other. That's the whole point of the network. And it's happening right before our very eyes. So we already have over 370 people inside. Join if you guys see the vision.
We always harp on it, how today's day and age, it's a global game. It's super competitive. The teams win. The individuals that pop up and do enormous things and build enormous businesses just don't exist anymore. It's a team game. It's a team atmosphere. So you have to get in and you have to learn, because there's so much to learn in every aspect of business and just life, from financial markets to building businesses with strategies and advertisements and sales and, being your fitness and all of that. It's all intertwined into becoming the best person you could be. The ultimate professional is what we call it in our community. So if you want to actually take those steps and to start learning these things and to start applying them into the real world, maybe like Priamo said, maybe you're debating on if you want to go to college or not. And you're like, I don't have the money. I don't have $20,000 to $30,000 a semester to go to school and to get an average education. I'll tell you right now, anything you think you could learn in college, you can learn in the community in 3 months.
Yep.
And if you want to do something high end, like, I don't know, say Prama went to school for engineering. He knows engineering very well. Well, there's principles and there's things in business that you could learn. Maybe not like a physics aspect, but real life appliances, if you want to build businesses and you want to generate money, which is what everybody wants to do, you have to understand how to do that. And how to make money is applying yourself, reaching out, sales, and then advertising, creating graphics, creating different things that people actually see so they know who you are. So there's all different layers to it, but you could learn all different things inside the Taylor's Code. So I would definitely go apply. Check out the link in our descriptions wherever you're watching this. It'll be there.
Yep. Yeah. On Bobby's stream, make sure you guys check his out too. So he has the link as well for the Taylor's Code. What's your discount code?
My discount code is the same as yours.
Beautiful.
TC444.
Fantastic. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you guys inside. We'll get to meet you soon. We'll be able to network, make money, grow the deal. And then, like Bobby said, win as a team, win as an organization. You see all the shit that's happening across the world right now, the cartels, the governments, the wars, etc. These are all networks. These are all organizations. The people who can win and fight and actually win these wars are the ones who are able to get mobilized, network with each other, be banded against the same ideas, morals, values. That's what you need to find for yourself. Don't find yourself on the outside with no group, with no identity, with nobody that you can rely on. If you're down $100 grand and you need to call somebody and you need to be able to make a move and be able to feed your family for that week, be a part of the network where they can help you with that. So these things, there's value to these things. So
absolutely.
Yeah, outside of that, I'm going to do a little Mr. Producer. We got all them hoes. Let's see. Stream ending. Boom.